What's up guys, PTCG here and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today guys, we're going to be continuing our streak of non-deck profile videos, kind of the alternative formatted videos, talking about different topics in the Pokemon TCG space. And I do apologize for that. There's just a lot that I've been wanting to talk about and I just kind of took a vacation. So I'm back and I'm going to try and start making more consistent content. But I do have a bigger project in the works. I'm currently scripting it, and it's about 7 pages right now. It's probably going to be around, I want to say, 12-ish pages. So that's going to be a lot of editing, and I'm going to be focusing a lot of time and effort into that. So the next few videos that I make are probably going to be a little bit less edited, kind of like bare bones style. So I do apologize in advance. But today we're going to be talking about Expanded and kind of how it's become a dead format. And yeah, let's just get right into it without further ado. So, Expanded is basically a wasteland. No one's there, no one's playing it anymore, and all diversity has been thrown out the window. Some of you guys who are like maybe very long-time viewers of my channel may remember that about 2 years ago, I think it's like a month away from 2 years ago at the time of recording this video, I made a video talking about how toxic Expanded was, how toxic the entire format was, and how restrictive it was because of such a wide card pool. There were so many toxic combos that you could create, so many just broken combos to the point where it restricted the format by being too free. Like, there was too much freedom, which caused restrictions in a sense. And you can see this in the Lost Origin format. That's where we're going to start this kind of like journey in the degradation, I think is how you say it. But I know that Limitless at least has expanded stuff since Vivid Voltage. But looking here, you can see there is so much diversity in just a Lost Origin expanded format. You can see all these different really cool decks going all the way back like to the days of like Primal Groudon actually had success at one point. I don't think it was on this year or in this format, but it's just insane to... Oh yeah, here it is right here. It's insane to look back at Expanded and see how many different decks there were and how creative it once was, where you could build so many different kinds of decks and they could perform varying levels, and just it allowed people to be creative. It definitely was still toxic due to certain cards and combos from a card pool that's been around since 2011, since the Black and White days, which is just way too big of a card pool. And I think someone in my local Discord explained it best, saying that if Pokemon really wanted to bring Expanded back, and we'll talk about this later, there'd just be way too much work. It's basically a lost format, but Expanded is one of Pokemon's quote-unquote official formats. This basically means that Standard is an official format. That's the most popular one, and that's the one that basically every player knows about. Expanded is also an official format, meaning that it is officially sanctioned by the Pokemon Company, but it's kind of been cast aside for a very long time. And other formats that are like fan-made formats like Cubes and Gym Leader Challenge by Tricky Gym have really kind of taken its place and kind of diverted attention away from Expanded. So you can see here in Lost Origin, you can see that there were 907 players. There were 38 tournaments, and there were over 2,700 matches, which is really decent for a format that's been around for such a long time, and just overall, kind of, it was still chugging along. And honestly, I was like, okay, well, this is pretty decent for the time, and I didn't really think much about it. But as time went on, I started noticing kind of a downward trend, and I'll show you a graph I'll show you a chart, excuse me, not a graph, in a little bit. But looking at Lost Origin, you can see that this is a pretty decently popular format. Going to Silver Tempest, it even got bigger. It got way bigger because of Regidrago V-Star. And you can see 316 people played Regidrago box. And then Shadow Rider Calyrex. And this is kind of like the regulars, seeing through all of these different decks. You can see like the top 10 is kind of like the regulars of the format. And it was pretty cool to see the cool stuff that Regidrago could do. It was absolutely broken, and like Double Dragon, plus having all these different overpowered dragon cards from, at the time, I think it was like 12 years of, I think it was 11 years at that point in time of cards to work with. It was just insane, especially for Regidrago. But these other decks as well have a whole bunch of really cool tips, or like, not tips, many cool tricks that they could work with and stuff. And I didn't really think, again, I didn't think anything about Expanded. I just saw it as another format that existed while I was focusing all my attention into Standard, and then also starting to dabble a little bit into Gym Leader Challenge, but I never ever thought about Expanded. And that's for a decent amount of people who play the TCG, is they don't really notice or care about Expanded. Next up, we had Scarlet and Violet, and this is the first major hit that we saw. And that's because only 5 tournaments happened in Scarlet and Violet. 65 players played in it and only 125 matches. This is a significant decline from the peak that just happened, which was Silver Tempest. And you can see the diversity kind of took a massive dip. Obviously, there's less players. That means there's going to be less diversity. But you can see that there are still some consistent top runners with like Shadow Rider Calyrex, Palkia, Regidrago, Lugia. But you also had Miraidon making an appearance. Regieleki kind of boosted up those electric-type Pokemon, which was nice, but obviously not many people played it. So it just wasn't that amazing. So this is kind of where we take our first look at why the format is dying. It's at this point in time, it's just dying. It's not dead, it's just dying, I guess. Or this is, for some people, you might see this and be like, oh, okay, that's just kind of a low point. You can bounce back from it. And it kind of did, just a tiny bit, not too much, in the Paldea Evolved format, where we got things like Iono, we got Reversal Energy. Yeah, it was Reversal Energy. We got these different cards that allowed for different combos, and once again, we saw a very tiny spike in players. 174, 5 tournaments, 522 matches, which is way better than the 65 that you had before. And you can see that, once again, very consistent. But then you had things like Chien Pao starting to make its debut. And there was a bit more diversity. And the meta started kind of evening out as decks were kind of established and stuff. Regidrago and Lugia and Palkia at the top. Gardevoir actually started doing well. Gardevoir wasn't even present before, which was nice. It's just, it brought a lot of new decks and a lot of new cards to the table, kind of because it was our quote-unquote Rebel Clash set, which meant that it was just filled with like a lot of competitive stuff that could be used. And so yeah, it was honestly, Paldea Evolved was pretty cool for Expanded as a whole, but then we get to Obsidian Flames and it grows again with the addition of a lot of other new cards. You started seeing more, kind of a more established, it just kept getting more and more established with kind of our top dogs like Lugia, Shadow Rider, Miraidon, Palkia, still reigning strong over everything else. But you also had a couple of different decks that were a bit lower on the list before start to make an appearance, and 8 tournaments, 678 matches, and most importantly, 227 players throughout those events, which is a significant increase from the past 2. So this was good. It was starting to look pretty good for Expanded, and then it got even better. with Paradox Rift, and that is partially because we got things like Goldango, we got Turbo Roaring Moon, which in Expanded is even more turbo. Like, it was pretty cool to see these kind of standard decks that were kind of tearing the game apart at the time go into Expanded and perform even better because there's a bigger card pool. And again, no one really was paying attention to it other than the few people who were playing. Just looking at 417 players, and I know I was kind of like praising the other formats for kind of like bringing a resurgence after the awful player count of Scarlet and Violet. But looking at all of this, you can see that this is still a pitiful amount of people who are playing this rather than playing in Standard, where if you look here, there were 43,000 people who played in the Standard format. In Expanded, that's not even close, honestly, to what's going on in Standard. And that's just showing that Expanded, like, looking at Expanded, 417 is an impressive number. And that's really saying something for an officially sanctioned format. Moving on to Temporal Forces, we can see that it took another major hit. Only 88 players, which is the second worst since Scarlet and Violet. And again, this is kind of just some very familiar faces. Kind of the meta is so established at this point, it's getting kind of stale in a sense. You had Raging Bolt appear, you had Great Tusk appear, but it was just becoming stale. Like, the same decks were just winning all the time, having up to like 65%, 66%, even 80% win percentages. And it just wasn't very entertaining anymore because, like I said in my previous video that I made 2 years ago, by having so many different cards and having access to all of it, you restrict the creativity that people can have, or more, to word it better, you restrict the competitive viability and competitive potential that other decks have. Lugia, Regidrago, and Palkia specifically were at the top just because they are so strong that they beat basically everything else. And that's just really sad, honestly, to think about. Whereas in Standard, the format is constantly changing because cards are getting rotated out, or new cards are coming in that improve pre-existing decks. And it's always changing because also Pokemon is putting more attention on it and regulating the format. At this point, Temporal Forces, Charizard had just reigned supreme, and it still continued to be kind of the best deck in the Standard format, but that was about to change with Twilight Masquerade, and that's because Pokemon saw how good Charizard was performing, and they told creatures, like, hey, we gotta regulate this format, we gotta make it fair for everyone, and that's when you got things like a huge boost to Raging Bolt, and they added the Ogre Pawns, specifically Cornerstone Mask, and more importantly, Teal Mask. Both were effective against the best deck in the game, which kind of leveled off Charizard and made it about the 6th or 7th most popular deck, whereas in Expanded, there is no regulation at all, and you can see that Lugia, Regidrago, and Palkia just consistently are able to outpace, outperform, and outpower basically every other deck in the format. But then we get to the saddest one of all, Twilight Masquerade, and 2 tournaments, 13 players, and only 20 total matches. This is so sad to look at. Like, literally looking here, when I got the inspiration for this video, I was just kind of looking through my, Limitless, because I was trying to build a deck list with Japanese proxies, and I accidentally opened up Play Limitless, which is different from regular Limitless, and I was like, hey, I should actually check on what's been going on in Expanded. Has anything new come out of Twilight Masquerade? So out of curiosity, I checked, and it was abysmal. I was like shocked at how awful this was. Just looking at this format, the remnants, the remains of this format in 13 players. 13 players is less players than I had at our local Gym Leader Challenge tournament in North Dakota. In North Dakota, yeah. A place where basically it's a desolate wasteland. People think no one lives there. That had more players in a Gym Leader Challenge event, which is already also not a super popular format, had more people than every single expanded tournament, the 2 tournaments that there have been. An officially sanctioned Pokemon format, and it blows my mind. It's like, how did we go from at one point having where did it go? There it is. 1,894 players in 88 tournaments to having 2 tournaments and 13 players. It's just so sad to look at. And it's just a massive downfall. And honestly, I think that this is just showing how dead this format is. I know I've said dead a lot in relation to this format, but that's really what it's become. This game is just becoming more and more focused on standard. Creatures and the Pokemon Company are focusing more on standard because that's what's going to be making them the most money, that's going to be the most appeal, and that's because there's the most players in it. If we look at Twilight Masquerade in standard, you can see that there are 23,000 players with 335 tournaments. And this format's kind of getting close to drawing to a close, but you can see that there is a very diverse meta. You can see that this is basically one of the most diverse metas we've had in a very long time. And looking back at Expanded, you can see that the 2 top dogs are still here, but you can see like, okay, well, Other is just kind of random. Anything goes in Other. Like, it's not very easy to track that, and that's why it's called Other, is because there can be so many different things. So it's not easy to be able to say, oh yeah, Other is just the best deck in the game, because that's not you can't track that. It's not one specific deck. It's just randomness, honestly. Great Tusk Mill, okay, I mean, cool, a mill deck. Gouging Fire, also pretty decent. I know that there's some decent combos with that. But then you got Palkia, Lugia, and then looking here, you have 6 people who played other decks. You had 2 people who played Great Tusk Mill, and everyone else played just 1. And that's just so awful. Just looking at this, how do you go from having thousands of people playing this format to less than 20, like less than 15 even? Looking at the line chart for expanded player numbers, you can see that at the start of Lost Origin, there was a decent amount. It was like still close to that 1,000 range we were talking about. Then it had a huge spike, and it just stood strong right there. And then after that, it only got worse. Scarlet and Violet showed just how bad the format got. Then it started making a small climb, which was like, okay, maybe this can come back. And then it just withered and died. So looking at this chart really just shows, it's weird to look at in like a statistical sense, just how bad this format got and how quickly it just fell. This was all from one set. The changing of the meta in standard caused this to happen, and that's just insane. So what does this mean for expanded, other than the fact that it's basically dead and that no one plays it? Well, first off, it just truly shows how negligent the Pokemon Company and creatures have been towards regulating the whole thing. It's really sad, honestly, that this is an official tournament structure. I know I kind of repeated myself here, but looking at how many cards there are, how many broken cards that should not be allowed in that format that still are allowed, is mind-boggling. Like, there shouldn't be this many different options to people. Like, 11, actually, at this point in time, there are 13 years worth of cards to choose from, and you can choose some of the most toxic cards in the history of the game. You've got, like, Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia. You've got, you can use Palkia V-Star to its full effect. You can use Lugia in the same way that it was in the Crown Zenith heydays. You can use it the exact same way then, but with even more cards, having access to things like Wally and other expanded things like what is it? I think it's it's the Mill 3. It's always there. It's always there. It's let me just look real quick because I kind of forgot. Battle Compressor. There it is. You can use Battle Compressor and get your Archeops into play immediately. So it's difficult to be able to regulate a format like that just because there are so many different cards. And some people have, like, they've really proposed, that's the word I'm thinking of. They've proposed an idea where you just kind of, it's a rotation. As time goes on, older sets should be filtered out. They should be rotated out. And if there's a really problematic card, then it should just go away. Like, recently, not recently at this point, but semi-recently, Expanded got a tiny bit of attention when Scoop Up Net was banned. And that's because Scoop Up Net could be used with EXs, uppercase EXs, and you could just keep using them over and over again. Also, though, at the same time, creatures unbanned Lusamine and Wally for who knows what reason. Lusamine can create an infinite loop, and you can just keep using Lusamine over and over again to get back problematic stadium cards, really annoying supporters, and even Lusamine itself. And you can just keep doing that over and over again. And then Wally basically breaks the entire point of playing the game, because if you go second on your first turn, you can go Wally. You can set down a Lugia V, you can go Wally, you can into your V-Star, then after that, you can Battle Compressor away 2 Archeops, put those Archeops into play, and boom, all of a sudden you're doing tons of damage, just like that. Same thing with Regidrago. You get your Regidrago V, you Wally, you Battle Compressor, and you can use a Double Dragon Energy, plus something, an Energy Acceleration card, Energy Switch, or something like that, and then boom, you got your Regidrago turn 1. So, it's just really difficult to be able to regulate a format that has so many cards and so many moving pieces. And I think that's part of the reason why people are just not interested in this format anymore. It's just because it's so bland, it's so dull, which is ironic considering how many different options you have. It's basically infinite possibilities in this format, but because there have been consistent top dogs with Palkia and with Lugia and with Regidrago, there's just no appeal to this format anymore. So, yeah, I was originally actually going to talk about this topic before, but I ended up making a different video. But because I just felt that it wasn't worth talking about. But I knew I had to make a video when I looked at the Twilight Masquerade expanded and just how pitiful this is. So I think that's really where I'm going to leave this off. I apologize if I repeated myself a lot. I tend to do that. And, yeah, it's really just the sad state of this format. And I honestly don't see it recovering anytime soon. I don't really ever see it recovering. It might still see a couple spikes, maybe a triple digits here and there. But because this format's been so neglected over time, and it's just become so boring to play, there's just no point in trying it anymore. So, I know I sound so defeated right now, but it's just really sad to see a format like this wither away. So, that's going to be it for this video. Again, I am working on my bigger video, so if you guys do want to see that and kind of like updates for that, then, stay tuned. I should give more information once we continue down the line with more content. But if you guys want to see the video when it comes out, make sure that you're subscribed. It really helps the channel a ton. We are getting really close to 900 subscribers at the time of recording this video, and I'm really hoping to get to 1,000 relatively soon. That would be awesome. And make sure that you keep notifications on, because I will try and start uploading more frequently. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, God bless, have fun, we'll see you out there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all so much for watching.